Good morning. How are you doing, Angelina? Good to see you. Thanks for coming today. So what's up? Did you have a good weekend? Did you do anything interesting? I actually watched football with my father, and then I volunteered at the Miracle League this weekend, helping the little kids play baseball. It was a lot of fun. Cool. Sorry, my nose is itching. Somebody must be talking about me. What does that mean? You know, if your palm gets itchy, you're getting money. If your ears get itchy, people are talking about you. My nose is itchy. I'm not sure what that means. So, well, looks like it's just going to be you and me this morning, Angelina. And that's cool. We'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about health psychology. Okay, let's go to the PowerPoint presentation. So, if you remember, I've been talking to you about the different subfields of psychology, and I said there's lots of different directions in which psychologists go. One area that you're going to find psychologists involved in is helping people lead healthier, happier lives. This is the area of psychology known as health and well-being. Part of it's knowing how behavior and the environment affects our psychological health and what the link is between our psychological health and our physical health. And so some of it's going to be biological and very, very sciencey, Angelina. But the other area in which health psychologists are involved is actually the dissemination of information and the encouraging of people to engage in the right habits. So not only are health psychologists kind of like scientists, but in a sense, they're like advertisers as well, because we know that you can have all the great health behaviors in the world, but if people don't follow these behaviors, then they're no good. And so, health psychology is that area of psychology that understands the link between the mental being and well-being, and also how to advertise these health effects to the general population so that they take advantage of these. We're going to talk a little bit about three different health behaviors today: exercise and healthy eating and smoking. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about stress, Angelina. That's probably going to be the more theoretical day. We'll talk about the physical link between stress and how that works through the mind and gets to the body and causes the negative physical effects that we know stress causes. So we're going to talk about that theoretical stuff on Thursday. Today is going to be a lot about being basically, it's going to be like a PSA. I'm going to just give you the health benefits of engaging in some of these behaviors, and these are statistics you can arm yourself with to talk to other people and to try and convince them and yourself that you need to live a healthier, happier life. Okay. Really quickly, I'd like to introduce you to this is my grandmother, Viola McCrae. She actually lived to be 101 years of age. And she drove herself to her 100th birthday party. She was actually still well enough to live on her own and drive at the age of 100 years. And what I want you to know, right, is that not impressive? She was smart right until the very end. She was under full control. An amazing lady. And you know, one of the things that she said that was very impressive, or that she demonstrated really, is that good health is all in how you face life and the choices you make about how to be a happier person. She worked hard, she played hard, she went to bingo, she went to church, she was married her entire life. she engaged in a lot of what you might call healthy behaviors. And so this is kind of a joke and a funny twist on the way my grandma used to talk about things, but these are all great life lessons, things that you need to think about if you want to live a long and happy life. The crazy thing is, a lot of longevity, making it into your 80s and 90s, is going to depend upon the health behaviors that you begin engaging in right now, Angelina. Okay. And so it really is important for you to become this healthy person, because genes are going to sort of develop you and show you to be the adult that you are, with your eye color, your height, your weight, maybe congenital abnormalities. But if you really want to stretch that life out and have good well-being well into your 80s and 90s, it's going to be up to you to engage in the right healthy behaviors. And you know, in the course resources, I've got a really interesting video that's funny and also scientific. A fellow, Dan Gilbert, is a positive psychologist, and he is a scientist who studies scientifically the concept of happiness. He actually makes measurements to sort of learn what kinds of things people find satisfying. And he's got a great 1 hour, or actually, I think this is a shorter one. This is a 20-minute talk. Please, 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 Angelina, if you get time, watch this. You're absolutely going to love it. Okay. Now, here's the thing. As psychologists, we're interested in not just living a long time. Living a long time is great, like my Nana. But my Nana wasn't a sickly person. She wasn't a sad person. She was a very, very productive person. My Nana had a state we'll call well-being. So one of the things, the reason that psychologists get involved in exercise and smoking and obesity and other what you might think of as health or biological problems is because these biological problems can affect not only how long we live, Angelina, but how well we live. All right. And so, so what well-being is what you might call not only just your physical health, but it's also being a happy person and being able to have fun. It's also being engaged with life, and it's also finding meaning in life. Well-being is like being productive, being happy, and being healthy. So what we're after, Angelina, is not just existing a long time, but living your best life, if you will. And the branch of psychology that my friend Dan Gilbert is known as positive psychology. And this is a basic research area. These guys are scientists. They run experiments, make measurements, test hypotheses, and the whole 9 yards. And they focus on the scientific study of human qualities that influence your sense of well-being. All right. Now, what do we know about well-being? Well, really, it's a product of a lot of things. It's a product of just your overall physical health. Some people are born having more physical challenges than other people. If you're born with sickle cell anemia, or you're born with Down syndrome, or you're born with or juvenile diabetes, these are basic biological processes that are going to affect your well-being. But you know, there are other qualities as well. One is your own individual psychological makeup. Angelina, you seem like a happy, positive kind of person. The kind of person that's probably got a strong sense of self and a good personality. You know, your personality is going to affect your sense of well-being as well, most days. Okay, fair enough, right? And then your social situation, Angelina. Hopefully, you're in a culture and you're in a place in your family where you have the kind of situation that makes you feel free and makes you feel like you can be productive and you can do whatever you want. There are some social situations, some cultures. Culture affects how happy people are. So when we think about what adds to people's sense of well-being, your book's going to talk about this thing called the biopsychosocial model. And we know that well-being is just a product of all of these conditions. So it's a complex process. What is it that's going to make your life good? When you ask that broad a question, Angelina, you've got different sort of, there are lots of different things that factor into that. Now, what are some of the areas of interest to behavioral health psychologists? These are the ones that are covered in your book. They're going to talk about smoking, alcohol, and drug abuse. They're going to talk about unhealthy eating behaviors. They're going to talk about exercise, its impact on health, healthy sexual practices, and stress. We're going to cover most of these. We're going to leave healthy sexual practices out. I'll let you decide to do as you will. But these behaviors can be compulsive or non-compulsive. They can be done in a healthy manner or not, or in an unhealthy manner. And these are habits that we develop. And psychologists are very interested in habits, how they form, and how to change them. And so that's really what this section of health psychology is about. What are the healthy habits, and how can we change unhealthy habits? Now, Angelina, do you ever exercise? Are you an exercise kind of person, or have you sort of fallen off the wagon? A lot of times people get really, really busy. Oh, you do exercise. Fantastic. Cool. Well, one of the things that I talk about in my developmental psychology class 2 or 3 times a week, fantastic, get that heart rate up. Okay. Now, exercise. It turns out when you start looking at mortality statistics and gathering demographic data about people, whenever you go to the doctor, you always give them information. When I was sick, when I got cancer several years ago, you go to the doctor and they ask you lots of demographic questions. Have you smoked? How long you smoked? What's your weight? They take all these different measures. And one of the things you can see is that being an exercise person, engaging in regular exercise is really going to provide a health benefit for a lot of outcomes that you're going to see. You're going to have lower rates of cancer. You're going to have lower blood pressure, less heart disease, and you're going to live a longer life. And so there are a lot of qualities associated, physical impacts associated with being a regular exerciser. Now, you knew that. I didn't need to tell you that, Angelina. But maybe you're not aware, there are cognitive and emotional impacts associated with exercise as well. So, regular exercise, especially aerobic exercise, appears to be a protective factor as you get older in life, Angelina. So, one of the qualities of well-being that I just mentioned on the slide before is being a productive, intellectually functioning human being. If you've ever been around somebody who's experiencing some form of dementia, Angelina, you know that they are not living their best life. They're not really achieving a sense of well-being. And so, what we do know is that exercising, thank goodness you do that, serves as a protective factor to keep you from suffering the effects of dementia that do begin to creep in for almost everybody. My grandmother kept her mind till about the last 3 or 4 months of her life. For a lot of people, they begin, and she was getting a little less sharp for a couple of years prior to that. You could tell she wasn't quite the person she'd been. Cognitive decline is a negative aspect of human development. But one of the things you can do is you can stave that off with regular exercise. What kinds of impacts are you going to see? You know what? One of the things that happens to brains as you get older, Angelina, is they shrink a little bit. That's what happens to your brain. It shrinks, and the wrinkles on the outside of your brain become a little less pronounced. They become smoother, as if somebody's sandpapering off your brain. One of the things that you're going to see with people who exercise a lot is that their brains don't shrink as much during late adulthood as those who don't exercise. This is going to lead to better memory, and these people are going to just, in general, be a little bit sharper. And as I suggested, we're going to have lower rates of dementia, of dementia disease in people who regularly exercise. Now, you probably know this, Angelina. When you exercise, it makes you feel good. You feel happy when you come out of the gym. I'll bet, Angelina. If you're like me, I can go into the gym in any mood, but walking out of the gym, I usually feel pretty happy with life. And so, what I know is that regular exercise also impacts your emotional functioning, right? It's going to be associated with improved emotional functioning. So, we don't really talk about this in biopsychology because it's not in your textbook, but this in intro psychology, you might talk about this in biopsychology, is the reward pathway, the reward circuit in your brain. It's going to be your hypothalamus, your cingulate cortex, your nucleus accumbens. It's several small subcortical brain structures. This circuit is the circuit that you use to make yourself feel good, to give yourself a burst of neurotransmitters, your endorphins and your serotonins. Regular exercise positively impacts the functioning of this circuit. It's a good way to help people who are suffering from depression or trying to change an alcohol habit. And just 10 minutes of exercise is going to enhance your mood. And I'm preaching to the choir because you do it 3 days a week for a half an hour. But even when you get busy, when you get your first job, Angelina, and maybe you're not able to get to the gym like you want, if you can go for a very vigorous walk on a break, even for 10 minutes, that's going to provide some sort of protective benefit to your health. Now, one of the things that I struggled with, Angelina, was my weight. I didn't exercise. I was an athlete and ate like an athlete as a high school student. And then when I got out of high school, I quit exercising altogether, but I still ate like an athlete. And I wound up becoming, Angelina, I guess there's no way to say it except obese. I became very, very big. And about, gosh, it was 7, 8 years ago, I went to the doctor, and for my annual checkup, my numbers were so bad, the doctor wanted to put me on cholesterol medicine, diabetes medicine, and blood pressure medicine because my numbers were all messed up. I was 5'6", 206 pounds. And the doctor told me, Chris, you are obese. You need to do one of two things. Take all these medicines. I said, is there a plan B? He said, well, yeah, you could lose some weight. And so I went into the gym, Angelina, and exercised for the first time in 25 years. And I dieted, and I lost 60 pounds. This was about 7 years ago, 2015. I lost all of these weight. And I went back to the doctor 6 months later, and my blood pressure was normal, my cholesterol level was normal, my insulin level was normal, and all of this was affected by my level of obesity. Yeah, it wasn't feed, but you know what? You could say, why'd you get in that shape to begin with? And so, one of the things that I think is important, and Angelina, if you exercise 3 times a week, you probably try to take care of yourself food wise. I'll bet you don't have this problem. But let's just be aware of this so that we can talk to our friends who maybe need this pep talk. And having a high BMI is really predictive of a lot of negative uh, uh, outcomes. Now, there are a lot of things that cause people to be heavy. I know it's not everybody is like me. I had a thin body. My reason for being heavy was I just ate too much, right? And I was lazy. But I know there are other things that cause people to engage in these things. So some people are just born with genes that sort of make them more likely to grow up to be heavy. Maybe their metabolism is different, right? And there are emotional factors that cause people to eat. Some people eat out of loneliness, some people eat out of boredom, some people eat out of anxiety. And so there are psychological components that affect this. And then there are also cultural factors. Here in America, we are a fast food McDonald's kind of place. Um, I visit my friends down in Mexico, and everything is tacos and beans and fresh vegetables. Uh, so, there are cultural factors, and so you're going to see sort of cultures will play a role into the types of bodies that people grow into. But one of the things I will tell you that is obesity is a big problem in the United States. No news there, right? But you can tell your friends, obesity rates for US citizens have doubled since 1980. I remember 1980, I was an 11-year-old boy, and there weren't as many heavy people then as there are now. It's really striking to think about the change that's occurred from that time. I remember, said as a kid, everybody's parents seemed active and fairly thin. But now, not so much. Now, I work on a baseball field umpiring during the weekends, and I umpire 10 and 11-year-old boys playing baseball. And one of the things I can tell you is that there are an alarming number of obese 11-year-old boys on baseball fields these days. Now, I applaud them for being out on the field, being active, but there are just too many really heavy kids now. The statistics is going to suggest to you that obesity rates for children have increased 400%. There are 4 times as many obese children now as there were in 1960. Now, and the problem with being obese children is that you're not going to get any more active. And so these obese children are going to grow up into obese, sedentary lifestyles as adults. And these are going to predict those health problems as an adult. Increased rates of cancer, increased rates of heart disease, increased rates of diabetes, and all of the negative health effects that go with these things. And remember when I suggested to you earlier with regard to the biopsychosocial effect, if your body is failing you, it's hard to experience a sense of well-being. No matter how tough your ego is, your psychology are, and is, and no matter how supportive your culture is. So, uh, really, this obesity, and not just the obesity, but the early onset obesity, is a problem in our culture, right? Now, again, there are cultural factors that impact BMI. One of the things that I've noticed since the 80s, number one, in the 80s, we didn't eat out at fast food restaurants very often. They were considered a luxury. Almost everybody's parents cooked at home. You always went home at 6 o'clock for dinner time. Nobody has dinner time anymore. Now everybody eats at fast food restaurants. And the other thing is, when you do go to restaurants, everything is go large now. You notice you go to the fast food joints and they have one size for their soda. It's like every soda is a 32-ounce Coke. I don't want a 32-ounce Coke. You don't need a 32-ounce Coke. That's nothing but sugar. But if you drink a gallon of Bojangles of tea every day and eat their fast food, of course you're going to get fat. So one of the things you're going to notice that there are just so many different fast food places out there, and they all have such large portion sizes. One of the things that I noticed over in Europe when I was over there, Angelina, is that you didn't get quite as much food on your plate as you did in an American restaurant, right? Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that when people are overweight, your hypothalamus, remember I told you a couple weeks ago, your hypothalamus is sort of your regulatory system. It's a motivated system uh, that we talked about it within the context of keeping you warm, regulating your body temperature, but it's also a hunger regulation center too. All right, that's another motivated behavior that occurs. And you can damage part of that hypothalamus in rats, and they'll just eat until they become huge, huge, huge kinds of things, huge kinds of animals, huge animals. But the hypothalamus, like other emotional centers, learns to respond to environmental cues. And so one of the things that you're going to see is that you can get set up these environmental cues that you can activate a person's motivational center this way. And so these are all sort of the environmental cues that can affect these cultural factors, which can affect our eating behavior. If you think about it, every time you turn on TV, every 2 minutes, you see a McDonald's commercial. Think about these food cues and how they affect people, especially people who are overweight. Factors that affect individual BMI. Friends tend to be similar in BMI. You hang out, you eat the same kinds of foods when you're out together. So friends tend to be similar in BMI. There are behavioral genetics studies that demonstrate that that there are family links for genetic. There are genetic links for obesity. Um, Now, why? What's what? Why? Oops, excuse me. Why do we care about obesity? Here's where we can tie it into the sense of well-being in the psychological sort of angle, Angelina. Obesity and social acceptance. One of the things that you're going to find in social psychological research is that people do make judgments about others based upon their BMI, and attractiveness does matter. And unfortunately, uh, obesity is negatively evaluated in social situations. Now, what also you're going to see is that people who are obese tend to have higher levels of depression, anxiety, and lower levels of self-esteem. So you're going to see less social acceptance for people who are overweight, and this is going to be associated with lower levels of psychological happiness. And so this is why, again, if we're interested in human well-being, and one of those well-being is a sense of fitting in and happiness, um, uh, that you can think of obesity or your eating behavior, your weight, as being one of these factors that plays into this sense of well-being. Ah, wow, I'm going off the screen because my nose is itching. It's just, I don't want to be on the camera scratching my nose the entire time, Angelina. I am so sorry. Now, the weird thing is, while we have an epidemic of overeating in our country, there are actually some people who undereat because of psychological illness. Now, you may or may not know this, Angelina, but your body image, looking in the mirror, when you look at your body, part of what you see is imagined or hallucinated in your brain. One of the things that we've talked about over the course of this semester with phantom limb pain, with perception as the second part of sensation, when I talked about consciousness being limited, and we talked about um, these sort of limitations on consciousness, what I want you to know is that your body image uh, is sometimes matches up with your body, and sometimes your body image does not match up with what your body uh, is going through. I don't know if you've ever heard of hypochondriasis, Angelina. Sometimes people think they have a sickness and they don't. Um, there are sometimes people who believe that part of their body doesn't belong to them. Um, this is sometimes people's body image doesn't match up with their actual body. Like, oh, it's kind of like phantom limb pain too. Do you remember me talking? Have I talked about phantom limb pain this semester? You know, like somebody loses part of their body and yet that body part still hurts. Right. Okay. Well, just like a body part that's not there can hurt, you can think that there are parts of your body that shouldn't be there or imagine things that are not there. And so anytime we have somebody whose body image doesn't match up to their real body, you might call that some type of body dysmorphic disorder. There are many types of body dysmorphic disorder. And this is not a food-related disorder. This is uh, a body image-related disorder. Although the triggers for BDD and eating disorders may be the same, some people with eating disorders may have body dysmorphia. So it's kind of this weird thing. Now, a lot of the things that are going to cause people to have anorexia may cause them to have body dysmorphic disorders, like the triggers. Growing up in a very punitive and non-accepting household, sometimes these psychological antecedents will be the same for body dysmorphic disorder as will for anorexia. But basically, these are not food-related disorders. Okay, now, somebody with anorexia nervosa does have sort of a bit of body dysmorphia because these people think that they are fat. They look at themselves in the mirror, even though they can see their ribs, and they see a fat person. So this is a person who has a distorted view of their body. When they look in the mirror, they don't see what you and I see. However, the nature of this disorder is that it is a calorie restriction order, this restriction disorder. This is an eating disorder characterized by an exaggerated fear of weight gain. And this leads to extreme restriction of caloric intake. So this is an eating disorder, but there's a component of body dysmorphia to it, right? When they look in the image, they see sort of this heavy person, right? Now, and you'll see some of the statistics, some of the qualities of it. So when you look at somebody having a psychological disorder, they usually have to meet several criteria. One of the criteria for anorexia is that your BMI is too low. And the second is that you're focused on controlling your food intake and you do things that are out of the normal in order to restrict said food intake. You're typically going to see this occur in adolescence. The physical changes associated with puberty are probably pretty important in triggering this. It does occur in males, not nearly as often, but it does occur in males as well as females. And there are actually sort of physical problems. Maintaining too low a body weight is going to be associated with the loss of bone density as well as heart problems. And you know, for females, dropping below a certain level of weight is going to cause your menstrual cycle to be disrupted as well. Now, this is usually treated with cognitive behavioral therapy. We haven't talked about cognitive behavioral therapy yet, and I'm not going to talk about that until chapter 14. So the fact that they say it's treated with cognitive behavioral therapy is not going to really uh, not going to make sense as much to you. But that's sort of this process where you sit in the psychologist's office and you rationally talk about things and come to rational deductions. Okay, thinking is a habit, and sometimes people get into maladaptive habits, and so what you do is when you sit in the doctor's office, you talk about that thinking habit that you have, and then you try to create new habits that you reinforce or reward. And so it's part cognition, thinking about new habits of thought, and then trying to reinforce those new habits of thought so they become uh, the predominant habit. So, what happens with somebody who has anorexia is when they eat something, they feel a sense of loathing, and that causes them not, when they think about eating something, it causes a feeling of self loathing, so they stop themselves from eating. Well, those feelings of self loathing, that's a habit of thinking. And so you and I would sit down in the office and you would tell me about those feelings of self loathing. We would talk about the fact that they're not healthy and they're not correct. And then we would say, what's a better thought you could replace that with? And you'd say, well, I haven't eaten today and it's time to eat. So you're out and about, you have that trigger experience where you want to think this self loathing, I hate myself, I'm too fat. Because you were in therapy with me, you realize that that's the bad habit. We put the new habit in, you eat, and then you make a check mark in your notebook, which is your reinforcement for the day. So we use cognitive behavioral therapy, very resistant to change, very, very resistant to change. It takes a lot of therapy with the therapist where you talk about things and then you try to practice these new habits in triggering environments. Very difficult. Now, some people will eat, but then they regurgitate the food. And this is known as anorexia bulimia. So they're going to eat, then they're going to vomit and exercise to undo the food that they ate. Again, this is a lot of times it's going to be related to feeling body, some type of body dysmorphia, some perceived flaw in your physical appearance. Um, but it's going to sort of manifest itself in a different way, where the anorexic just doesn't eat and restricts the calories. The bulimic is going to go through periods of eating and then guilt associated with that eating, leading to these extreme behaviors. Most of your bulimics are going to be female rather than male. And you're actually going to see 1 to 2% of college-aged women are going to demonstrate this type of behavior. Now, some people, on the other hand, just engage in what you and I might refer to as emotional overeating. In a binge eating disorder, these are the people that regularly and repeatedly eat more food than is normal during a short period of time. So you may be the kind of person that feels the need 2 or 3 times a week to eat a whole package of Oreo cookies. Or maybe when you eat Oreo cookies, you don't just eat a whole package, you might eat 2 packages. So these are the people that engage in these really bizarro episodes of overeating. Now, they typically, people, when they do this, it makes them feel really bad. They're not stupid, they know what they're doing. But this sort of makes a person feels bad, creates these feelings of guilt and shame, which then can drive them back into the eating behavior because the eating activates a reward center uh, that they probably need to activate because they do feel sad and ashamed. These people tend to do this at least once a week. And of course, this leads to obesity, which is going to lead to lower self-esteem, more feelings of shame, more feelings of depression, which is going to cause this behavior to occur again. This is more common in men than it is in women. Whereas you see the body image pressures disorders are going to be more for the females than for the males. This binge eating, this acting out disorder is going to be more common in men. Okay. Finally, nobody's smoking anymore. Most everybody's vaping these days, and the data haven't come in yet, so we don't know how bad vaping is for us, but I'll bet you it's not good. When I was in Europe, everybody smoked. People smoked while they were eating. I saw people in Croatia smoking a cigarette and eating at the same time. Now, not as many people, it seems, in America smoke, but we still, 1 in 5 Americans do report smoking cigarettes. Did you know that 30% of all smokers are from China? They have the biggest population, and I have had friends that have visited there that tell me that they eat and smoke in China as well. Did you know that smoking is blamed for almost 500,000 deaths a year in the US and over 5.4 million deaths a year uh, worldwide? It decreases the average lifespan by about 12 years. You're going to have increased rates of heart disease, respiratory ailments, and some types of cancer. I quit smoking. I was a 2 pack a day smoker for 10 years, Angelina. I smoked from about, actually, I take that back. Yeah, I smoked from about 20 to about 30 or 32, 2 packs a day, very heavy smoker. Then I quit at 32. Now, I got cancer at 55 in my throat. And the one thing that the doctors kept talking about was the fact that I had smoked 20 years ago. I kept telling the doctors, yeah, I quit smoking 20 years ago. They said, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. I did not realize how dangerous a risk factor smoking was. And, they weren't sure what exactly caused the little tumor that grew in my throat. There were one of two causes. They said, if it's this other cause, we're going to easily cure this and you're going to get better. If, on the other hand, this turns out to be a uh, cancer-related, a smoking-related cancer, your likelihood of getting out of this are going to go down much, much lower. So when they did the biopsy, they did the little genetic test, Angelina, and it turns out I had the first kind. However, they still gave me extra radiation treatment just to make sure because they were so freaked out about my smoking behavior. Smoking definitely has negative physical outcomes for you. You probably knew this, but one of the things, and I knew this as well, but what really shocked me was how long the risk from smoking stays with you. I've been quit for over 20 years and it still didn't matter. Now, like most smokers, I began in early adolescence to be cool with my buddies at parties. My friends smoked cigarettes, so I wanted to smoke a cigarette. I didn't smoke a ton in high school, but I did start. I got used to the habit in high school. Now, I was one of those smokers that started in childhood, and most of my smoker friends, it seemed like, continued on into adulthood. A couple of us stopped. My friend Dave stopped, but about half of your smokers are going to persist into adulthood. And you know what? Smoking is going to kill about a third of these people, some type of cardiovascular disease or some type of cancer. I know you say that is crazy, Chris. I have a friend that died from lung cancer this past fall, and I have another friend who is in stage 4 lung cancer right now, and we are all in our 50s. Yes, Angeline, it's really weird. You don't think about it because cancer, heart attacks, all this stuff is so distant when you're 20 and 25. But I swear to God, as I'm getting into my 50s and my peer groups in their 60s, we're actually starting to die from some of those things you hear about on TV commercials. You know what I mean? I had a friend that stroked out a couple of years ago. Two cancer friends and a friend that stroked out. I'm in my 50s and my friends are in their mid 50s. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And what I want you to know, what health psychologists know, and what we need everybody else to know is that a third of you are going to die from this. Okay. Now, adolescent smoking has decreased by half since 1990. Yay! That's a great thing. And in fact, I noticed that my boys and none of their friends seem to smoke cigarettes. However, everybody is vaping. Everybody is vaping now. And the data just aren't in yet, but it can't be good because one of my boys vapes and I hear him coughing and hacking occasionally. And so I know it can't be a good thing. Now, my parents smoked, and they say, in fact, you know what? When I was 7, my parents, this is back in the 70s, the early 70s, before people cared about that. In fact, in the early 70s, my mom would send me in the convenience store. I would go up to the counter, Angelina, and I would say, "My mom needs a pack of cigarettes." She would wave from the car, and the person behind the counter would actually give me a pack of cigarettes to carry out to my mom. My mom and dad actually let me puff a cigarette when I was 7 years old, and I almost got sick. It was so nasty, and my parents both laughed. Having parents that smoke provides a model that your children will follow. Now, I quit when my oldest son was 3. That's why I quit, and my youngest son was 1. But my parents smoked until I was an adult, and they say that you provide a model to your children. So one of the things that I didn't want to do, one of the reasons I quit, was I didn't want my boys to see and copy what I was doing, right? Quitting smoking was super duper hard. The first 7 days, they say, before you get that nicotine out of your system, you are in a withdrawal state, just like you would be from alcohol or heroin. You in a sense, your body, you actually have nicotine receptors all over your body. That's one of you have a nicotine shaped substance in your body that naturally occurs. And so you have these nicotinic receptors throughout your body. When you smoke and quit smoking, when you smoke, your body adjusts to the level of nicotine that you're putting in the system. When you quit smoking, your body is in a withdrawal for 7 to 8 days. And this is a very difficult period when you quit smoking because it's on your mind the whole time. You're going to be anxious, uptight. And so some people talk about using nicotine replacement therapy, trying to wean yourself off of tobacco. The way that I found that was most useful is I just put them down one day. And for 7 days, it was difficult, and then it was only miserable for a while. I still think about smoking a cigarette occasionally, even though it's been 22 years now. Uh, but I just know that I wouldn't want to ever have to go through that withdrawal process again. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Cool. Well, that's all I have to say today. I know it felt kind of like health class and not like a psychology class. I appreciate that, Angelina. And health psychology is not my strength. But on Thursday, we're going to talk about stress and coping. And I hope that you can get some lessons on how to live a less stressful life on Thursday. Okay. So take care. Thanks for coming, Angelina. Have a great day. And I'll see you in webinar on Wednesday night.